Pressure Podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us, Bill.
Yeah.
Dude, we had a great time. We're recording this before Thursday at White Flame Brewery, but last Thursday at White Flame Brewery, my friend, Jon Nesbitt came out.
Oh, very cool.
You remember Kevin Allen from the drummer days?
Yes.
Back? He came out, played percussion, dude.
Oh, very
Him
cool.
and his wife, Ruth,
Yeah.
came out. Yeah, Ruth and I used to work together in the banking business.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, so I know them both. So they came out and hung out. We had a good crew hang out with us. But just keep in mind, on Thursdays here, I'm working out my set at White Flame Brewery in Hudsonville, Michigan, for my big trip down to Aaron Reed's book release party. So in May. So if you come out on Thursday nights, just PM me on our Instagram page just to make sure I'm going to be there. But it's an open mic, super laid back.
Very cool.
It's a lot of fun, Bill. And a lot of people don't know this, but Bill, you're quite an accomplished musician as well.
I used to be. Well, not accomplished. I used to study the arts.
Tickle the old ivories.
Yeah, a little.
Tickle ye olde ivories.
Ye old ivory.
Yeah, Shane. No, but so I'm excited about that. So thanks to everyone who came out and people who are supporting me with that. But Bill, what do you got going on this weekend?
Actually, nothing. It's beautiful. We've had a busy beginning of the year already, just like traveling and holidays and catching up with family on holidays. So this weekend, nothing.
Traveling, holidays, illegal fireworks that we've talked about before on the episode, transporting them across borders. Not really. Is there any fireworks
it's
that are
smuggling them in when they search everything?
Is it illegal still in Michigan, or is everything legal that's legal in Indiana?
I mean, there's stores in Michigan where you can buy them, like the I call them the illegal ones because I used to go to Indiana for them.
Right. Yeah.
I think they're all legal here, but it's just you can't fire them off except for around holidays.
Like there's like a time frame,
which is good because like I get sick of the late night fireworks on a work night,
Yeah. Did you see that that company catch on fire in Wyoming? That was the firework store.
Oh yeah.
That was pretty wild.
Yeah.
That was wild, and there were fireworks going everywhere, and wow, that was pretty crazy. But I've always wondered what it would be like if a fireplace. Do you guys hear the dog?
No.
No?
That didn't go to the recording.
You don't think so?
Nope. It was just in our ears.
Oh, my gosh.
That was hilarious.
That was funny. I actually, I'm getting ready for the another news segment.
Yeah.
And I popped up a YouTube, and it was this barking thing. So, might as well, in other news. Bill, normally we do in other news later in the segment, but because I look like an idiot, and I will go ahead and do it. But the two largest wolf ever caught on tape, we're going to put the YouTube link up on our YouTube, on our social, so you can see they're supposedly the two largest wolf ever caught on tape. Now, I don't know about that.
On tape though, that's the thing. Were they recording this to like 2-inch or?
It looks like maybe an 8mm camera.
Oh yeah,
like it's real fuzzy. This is kind of like the Sasquatch thing. It kind of looks like a wild hog, actually. What do you think, Bill?
I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't look. And they did that zoom. This is on phone. I think this is on a phone. You can tell by the orientation of the. Whoa!
There it goes. Oh my gosh! It looks like a horse.
That
does not look like a wolf. That looks like a hog.
No, that's a wolf, but it doesn't look like the biggest wolf ever caught on tape. Because wolves are a lot bigger than dogs, and I'd like to see the size of that dog away from this video.
Oh, there he goes again. Okay, well, I don't know. That doesn't look that big.
No, I think fake news.
Fake news. But the dude's got 5.6 million views on this video, and that wolf is not that big. That doesn't even look like a wolf. I guess it kind of does.
Yeah, that could be. I wonder where these are from.
I don't know.
And who this trademark is
Siddhartha. I wonder if it's like an Indian,
or Russian.
A Russian, yeah.
Possibly Chinese. I bet you there's wolves over there too.
That's really weird. We're gonna put this up on our socials, and you guys can decide if it's fake or real. It's
they're
funny.
not animation, but they're just wolves on video.
It's basically shot on a Razr phone, a Motorola Razr, like circa.
You see, they're bringing them back.
Are they really?
Yeah.
You gonna buy one?
No, I'm an Apple guy.
Me too. But what's the difference? Are they gonna be?
It's a flip phone now, so it's the folding Razr action, but it's a flip phone, like a clamshell like that. So it's a folding screen. So you got your phone that like looks like a smartphone,
right?
But then it folds up into a nice pocket size.
And the screen folds.
Yeah. See, I
That's
don't trust
crazy.
that because how many folds do you get before it's the end of life?
Yeah, it's kind of like you go to the store, like the IKEA. Have you ever
Yeah.
seen the IKEA store and they have the chairs and there's like a machine constantly
No, I
punching this? It's encased and it's one of these chairs you can sit in that's like kind of bouncy or whatever. And they have this machine that constantly bounces to see how many times it can bounce before it busts, and the thing just kind of keeps going.
Yeah.
So maybe like at the AT&T store or whatever, they'll have like a machine folding, unfolding, folding, unfolding, folding, unfolding. Yeah, I don't know.
That'd be wise. But
That would be a weird thing, though. What was your first cell phone? Do you remember the first one you got?
it was one of those old Nokias. I don't remember the model number. It's like one of those huge old Nokias that was like an analog and digital phone. So it was like a hybrid. But I can't remember the model now for the life of me. It was a popular one.
Was it a folder?
No, it was not the brick phone, but I mean it was just a straight phone. It wasn't a folding, like I didn't have the nice flip folding phones until like 2004.
Well, I had the Nokia as well. Houston Cellular was my cell phone provider back in the day. But I think everyone had those little Nokias, and it was like
Those were the giveaway phones. Yeah.
you get one free when you sign up. But it was like, are you kidding me? Like I remember the first time I got one, I'm like, this is the most unbelievable thing because I had a beeper before that. And
Yeah, same here.
I talked about this
Same
on
here.
that. Yeah, because you don't need a beeper in Cadillac, Michigan.
Nope.
At 18 years old or 17, I didn't need a beeper
Work's
either.
calling me in. I gotta go. Gotta go flip burgers.
It's not like, oh, there's an emergency, so I'm going to call my mom. Like, it's only inbound reception, you know?
Yeah.
But I had one when I was like 16, 17, and I had like, that clip on outside of my pocket.
We couldn't have them in school. They'd take them away from us and give us like detention if we were caught with a
Really?
cell phone or a pager.
Well, we didn't have any cell phones because they were in a bag when I was in high school. But the pagers, you guys had cell phones?
Yeah, there were some kids who had them. They were the bigger Nokias.
Uh-huh.
I think this was pre-Nextel. Do you remember the Nextel phones?
Well, yeah, I just got rid of my Nextel phone number. So if anyone knows my old phone number, I got a new number. Text me or shoot me a PM and I'll give you my new number. But yeah, I had my Nextel number in 2002. I just got rid of it like 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Same phone
I've still
number.
got my same phone number from 2002 also.
Really?
Yep.
I bet there's a lot of people like that. When you're young, you change phone numbers a lot because you're moving, you're grooving, you're doing your thing.
Yeah, home phones back in the day.
Oh,
that
that's
was
right.
The home phone, you can't take it from city to city. Where now you can port your number anywhere. I mean, like I could move across country and keep my 616 area code.
Yeah, we're working on a Musicians on the Fly series, and I had a guy I interviewed out of New York with an LA phone number, but he lives in New York. You know? I wouldn't want to give up an LA phone number. It's
No?
one of those that area code 310. That's just sweet, you know. Or an Austin number, but yeah, nowadays you just kind of carry everything with you and just kind of do your thing.
Long distance is a thing of the past.
Oh my gosh, long distance. In Texas, we had deregulated long distance. We didn't have to use one phone company.
Oh wow.
So you could dial 1010811 and then dial the phone number.
Yeah.
And you pay like 10 cents per minute. Or they give you like this prefix that you can put in before you dial the number so you can save on your long distance.
Do you remember phone cards?
Yes, of course.
Yep.
And it's funny because I went to India back in, when was it, 2002, 2003. I was dating Jamie, my current wife, and I, not my former
Not my
wife.
future wife, but my current wife.
My current wife. No, I'm just kidding. No, we were dating at the time, and I missed her really bad. There was no FaceTime. There was nothing like that. So I had to go into like this Indian village where no one spoke English, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Whoa.
like, it was the, it was not a village, but a market in India in a random town.
Uh-huh.
And I bought a phone card, like 1,000 minutes or something there. And so they were metric minutes. So in India, they were really like 60 minutes. No, just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
There were 100 minutes per hour instead of our 60 here in
It said
America.
1,000 Indian minutes versus the 60 U.S. minutes if you convert it like currency.
It's about the same.
Totally kidding. I think they invented the clock. So
That'll
I
cost
think,
you 6 kilominutes.
Yeah, 6. Why can't these Americans just get on the metric system so we all know what the hell's going on? Well, this is 1,000 kilominutes. It was only 5 U.S. minutes. No, but I remember having to use the the host that was keeping us, that was letting us stay at their place,
keeping us, my keeper,
babysitting me. I had to like use the phone card to call her.
Yeah,
and she answered the phone. She's like, "Oh my God, you called me from India." That was a big deal.
Yeah.
Now it's like you got FaceTime, just hook up to Wi-Fi and you can call whoever, whenever.
Yep. Or you buy a new SIM card in whatever country you're in.
Remember how expensive stuff used to be too?
Yeah.
Like cell phones and everything. Now it's so cheap.
Cell phones are still expensive. I mean, Apple keeps raising the price on them. You're looking at like $1,000 per phone now, but back in the day, the old flip phones, I paid $300 for a flip phone.
Yeah, that's
true. When I was still like just coming out of college, starting my career, I wanted a good Motorola flip phone, $1,000. Or I'm sorry, $300.
$300. Yeah, that's true. They were out there, and then you also had to sign a contract for a year or two.
Yep.
It's a different time, but prices have gone down as far as monthly service and things like that.
Yes.
Like
internet prices have come down now for some of these, unless you're on Comcast, and they keep jacking them up on you.
Yeah, and
I will talk bad about Comcast
and communications as far as over the internet and stuff like that.
Yeah,
it's all gone down, Bill.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, this week speaking of traveling overseas, this week we're talking to Jon. He's from Flywater Travel. We have some link there in our show notes from Flywater Travel, and he actually runs their Cuba trips.
Awesome.
So I'd love to go to Cuba. Cuba is one of those places that I'd like to go before it gets completely westernized.
Yeah. Yeah,
but that's all he does. He's from Dylan Rose. If you guys remember Dylan Rose, the saxophone player / world traveler. This is his buddy. They work for the same company. So
very cool.
He's going to talk about his trips to Cuba, how easy it is to go to Cuba. Because I always think like we're not allowed to go there, but there's some regulations that have lifted.
Things have changed.
There's been some changes, necessary changes. You know, we don't talk politics, but I think it was Obama who really opened up the travel down there. So that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I think that was a good thing. But you know, Jon's going to talk to us a little bit in depth about how to get there and how easy his company makes it if you want to fish those waters. And so anyways, it's pretty exciting.
Awesome.
So welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Today on the Remote No Pressure podcast, I'm very excited to have Jon Covich with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Jon.
Finally glad to be with you, Jeff.
Yeah, lots of emails and back and forth, but I'm glad we could finally do it. And you are friends with with another guest of ours, Dylan Rose, that's been on here, the saxophone playing fly angler. You were good friends with him, right?
Well, I don't know if we call it friends or not, which is kind of funny. You know, Dylan and I go way back. We are friends, but he actually worked for me at one point. You know, I'm a sales rep, and he worked with me in the office I'm sitting in right now, and now works for Flywater Travel. And so we are back and forth basically every day talking with each other. And he is indeed one of the good guys in the industry.
Yeah, that's great. He connected us, and you say you are a sales rep. Which lines do you cover?
I rep in Washington, Oregon, Alaska is where my territory is, and I do Thomas & Thomas fly rods, Galvan Reels, Outcast that makes all the inflatable great stuff, pontoon boats and float tubes, and then I rep for Flywater Travel as well.
Oh, well, that's great. That's great. Now the reason I'm excited about having you on is obviously you guys, Flywater Travel is a great organization, a great company that books travel. But something in particular, is that a whiskey bottle that I heard, Jon?
No, it's not a whiskey bottle. I was having a sip of water. I swear, it's only 10:05 here on the West Coast. So.
Okay. Just wondering, because one of the things is you cover Cuba, you do trips to Cuba, and very Hemingway-ish. If you pop the top of a whiskey bottle, I would say.
Well, you remember we're talking about Cuba, so it would probably be rum.
Rum, true.
Really, if we're going to stay true to form here. So yeah.
How did you end up going to Cuba? What instigated that whole thing?
Well, it's a little bit of a long story, or I shouldn't say it's a long story, but it's a little bit of a long history. I first went in the late 1990s. And if you got on your shelf the book that Randall Kaufman wrote on bone fishing, I was invited to go to Cuba with Brian O'Keefe because Randall was writing about, besides generally about bone fishing and all the intricacies of what bonefish eat and where they live and stuff. He wrote particular chapters on different parts of the world where bonefish lived. And so we went down so that Brian could take photographs of Cuba and the bone fishing in Cuba. So he and I went in, I think, 1998. And that was my first experience with it. And I went back a time or two after that, but spread out over the course of years. But in 2015, I went again. And at that point, I was working with Flywater. And I fell in love with it again, and things had opened up a little bit. And I thought, why am I not doing this more? It's so special that it's got to be something that I make a regular part of my gig, of what I do. And so I have made it just that. So I'm going to my 25th or 21st trip next month, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wow. Now, in 1998, Cuba was a little more closed off than it is.
It was.
Now, did you have to go up through Canada, or how did you?
Went through Mexico.
Okay.
To go there, and the thing about it was, the unfortunate part about it was I did what a lot of other anglers do when they go to Cuba. I didn't know much about it, and I just was given here's your trip, and here's what you're going to be doing, and so I didn't really see, neither Ryan or I saw much of Cuba. I mean, we spent one night in Havana on our way out. But we had a great fishing trip, but I didn't get to experience much of Cuba. And so that's something that now I have to say I encourage people to really do if they can, because it's such a special place outside of the fishing,
Does it still have the old time charm, or is it getting more westernized every time you go back?
Well, yeah, I guess it's getting a little bit more westernized, but you got to remember that it's very incremental in Cuba. So what you notice more than anything is you notice people's access to internet, for example, and Wi-Fi. 3 or 4 years ago, when we went to Cuba, there were people that were accessing Wi-Fi, but they had to be in particular places. They gathered in parks where it was a Wi-Fi zone, for example. Now they've got Wi-Fi in their homes. It's and it's just much more, and it's a lot cheaper than it was 3 or 4 years ago. So their access to information is greatly improved. But in terms of life in Cuba, the everyday, jobs and food and the economy, no, it hasn't changed that much. And if it's changed, it's gotten a little bit worse as of the recent past, as a matter of fact.
Because there were some new regulations on travel to Cuba and things like that, right? With the Trump administration, didn't they bring back some travel? What was it that they changed? Because I know Obama loosened it up, and Trump is tightening it up.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they've made a couple different changes, and so the things that really the biggest changes are, number one is that they banned cruise ships. American cruise lines from going there. And that was a big part of what was helping the economy, particularly in places like Havana. They curtailed many of the flights. So now you can only fly on American carriers from the U.S. mainland to Havana, where, in the recent past, you were able to fly to cities like Santa Clara and Camagüey. And that was a big help. Because it allowed you to see much more of Cuba. Cuba's big; it's almost 800 miles in length from east to west.
Wow.
And Havana's pretty far to the west. So unless you got a lot of time, and to get around the country, it makes it harder. And it made it a little bit harder for a few of the fishing destinations because they're kind of closer to those other airports. So now with flying through Havana, you have to, in some cases, make a pretty long drive to get access to those places. And then there's a couple other changes. One is that they made a list of hotels and resorts that Americans are not allowed to stay at. And it's largely because those resorts are owned in part by the Cuban government. And this new administration doesn't want money to go into the pockets of the Cuban government. It's a little bit, I don't want to be political, it's a little bit ridiculous because there's, no matter what, money goes into the pockets of the Cuban government, if you're a traveler to Cuba.
Right.
If you're staying at a resort, it does. If you're staying at a private Casa Particular, which is a private Cuban guest home, they pay a tax to the government, and so you're still putting money in the government's pocket, right? So that was one of the other regulations. And then the last one is that there's different categories of legal travel for U.S. citizens to Cuba, and they diminished some of that. They made the number of categories smaller. Okay.
Now,
so those are basically the changes.
Now, have you ever felt unsafe, or has anything ever happened to you while traveling through Cuba?
No, no, it's probably the safest country in the world to travel to. Right. I mean, it's just you have to remember. I mean, if you whatever you want to call it, is a communist or socialist society. It's a to a degree, it's a police state, no doubt about that. Um, and for travelers are the most valuable people in Cuba, right? Because they bring a lot to the Cuban economy. So travelers do not get messed with in Cuba. Besides which, although there's petty crime there, you talk to Cubans themselves, and they'll say, "Oh, I got something stolen off my front porch, or somebody stole my water pump off the roof of our building, or something like that." You never hear about muggings or armed robberies or anything like that. And I've recently, I think on one of the recent trips. When I was in Cuba, I was in a taxi. We were driving. It was late at night. We're coming back from being out to listen to some music in a part of town. And we're coming back and we were on dark, really residential streets. And the taxi driver said, "I love my country." And he said, "I love it because we're always safe here." He said, "If my car broke down right now, I could walk through this neighborhood and I would be completely safe. There's nobody that is going to make me feel uncomfortable." And it's true. That's just the way it is there. So no, I've never felt unsafe there ever.
Now, what is it about that area why is the bone fishing so good? Because I hear this from other people who've traveled to Cuba, and there's other places in the world you could travel to fish
Sure.
bonefish. But why
Sure.
why is that such a special place?
Yeah, well, people ask me that question all the time, and I kind of have to step back and say, hey, remember, it's never bad to go bone fishing, right? If you're going to Christmas Island, it's better than being where you and I are right now, which is in our offices in with winter surrounding us. So if it's Christmas Island or Belize or the Bahamas or wherever, that's better than nothing, right? But Cuba has a couple things going for it, and I would say the first thing is that, believe it or not, the Cuban government has actually done a very good job at protecting their environment. One thing Castro did in the 90s was he laid down a law basically that said we're going to have 30% of our coastline in protected marine areas or national parks. Right. So that's the first thing. So there's all these designated areas where there's no commercial fishing or anything like that, or no development that's allowed. That's one part of it. But even more important than that is, if you think about going to Christmas Island, for example, I think there are at least three lodges. There may be four there right now. And all those lodges fish the same places. So they fish the lagoon and they go to the Korean rack. And so you might go out in your catamaran to go fish Paris Flats, and there's already, six guys waiting those flats. Right. And certainly the same thing happens in Ascension Bay where there's 8 or 10 different lodges in Ascension Bay. In Cuba, it works completely differently. Outfitters who want to do business in Cuba and have a fishing operation there basically have to get permission from the government. And the government then gives them a license, and they're allowed to fish a particular geographic area, right? That's given to them to fish and to outfit, and only them. So there's no competition from anybody else to fish that area. And the government also says you're only allowed to have this many fishing skiffs in that area as well. So you might have 400 square miles that's yours to fish as an outfitter, and the government might only allow you 4 or 6 skiffs, which means 8 or 12 anglers that's at a time in that big expanse. So that's the thing that guests tell me that they love about Cuba, is that they feel like they're in these remote, unspoiled places because you just don't see anybody else. And of course, it has an effect on the fishing, right?
Yeah.
It makes it's perfectly logical that you would have fish that weren't as spooky, where you'd have more fish. For example, when you don't have as many people competing for their attention, and when you don't have any development on the shorelines and out there in those environments. So it's pretty spectacular.
Yeah, the name of our podcast is Remote No Pressure. The more remote you are, the less pressure the fish have, and the better life is. And the more remote you are, the better, less pressure you have and better life is.
Well, exactly. And, the saying that, that is so apropos these days is that, so many places in the world get loved to death, right? And we've all seen that. You go to Yellowstone or you go to the Bighorn River to fish, and that's the feeling. They're spectacular resources. And because they're so spectacular, everybody wants to go there and everybody's allowed to go there. right?
Right.
And in Cuba, it's just not the case. There's spectacular resources, but there's limited availability. And that really does make the resource, much better overall. The quality is exceptional.
Well, that's amazing. Now, Jon, just to switch gears a little bit. Normally, I start with these questions and end with what you're doing in Cuba. But how did you end up in fly fishing? I mean, you have a very unique career. But what started you? Did you grow up with a fly rod or?
No, I didn't. I grew up with a fishing pole, like a lot of kids do. And the funny thing is, I didn't have anybody else in my family that really fished. I had one older brother that liked to a bit, but my dad certainly, wasn't into it at all. But I lived in a place that was very rural, and there was a great lake that was nearby, and some great other, small ponds and stuff. And so I just told my parents, I want to fish, and so they were good parents, and I got a fishing pole, and I would hang out with my buddies and do it before school. Sometimes we would
Uh-huh.
go. There were a couple places we would go and fish. But the funny thing is I knew that I had a grandfather that was into fly fishing, and he had passed away when I was pretty young. I think I was 4 when he passed away, and he was from Scotland.
Hmm.
And he was a fly fisherman in Scotland. There's some great stories about him getting access to private property in Scotland. But when he came to the U.S., he would, take my mom, who was an only child, and they would fly fish around Western Washington, where I live. So I knew that I had that in my past, and was always sort of intriguing. So I think it was my early 20s that a buddy of mine got into fly fishing, and then he sort of helped me, and that was. Like so many other people, you start fly fishing and suddenly it's all consuming, right? You probably were that way yourself.
Absolutely.
A lot of other people, and that was just my deal. I mean, I was, working a regular job, but people at my job were sick of hearing me talk about fly fishing, and I'd come in on Monday morning, and I say, "What did you do this weekend?" Only so I could tell them about where I went and what I did, because I was just completely into it, and then
Right.
I ended up with a career in it, which is sort of crazy.
Yeah, it is an all-consuming thing, and we've talked about it several times on the podcast. Some of our listeners are probably tired of me talking about it, but it's a weird thing because I grew up spin fishing on the Gulf of Mexico, for redfish, for speckled trout,
Right.
and all that. Also for largemouth bass, just with spinning gear. But it's something about fly fishing; it is all-consuming, and it's just such a tight-knit community as well. It's a real camaraderie. It's not, when you meet someone else who fly fishes, you're instantly friends for some reason.
Yeah. No, it's true, and I don't know. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because, like you said, there's more of an intimate group. Maybe created because it's a little bit harder to do. Right? I mean, it's a little bit. There's more of a learning curve. For
Mm-hmm.
example, learning how to, not only to cast a fly rod, but to then be a good nymph fisherman, or be able to cast a spey rod or whatever. And I mean, it's not that there's not skill in casting a spinning rod, but I know that, I can take a kid out who's 6 years old, and we can cast a spinning rod pretty quickly, and we can't do that with a fly rod nearly as quickly. So maybe that's it. I don't know. I think the other part of it, to me, when I try and explain to people what makes, the sport itself so special, is there's something about just fly casting, I think. Right. I mean, we go to beautiful places, right? And that's a huge part of what we do. But there's something to me about fly casting, right? There's
Right.
that feel you get at the bend of a fly rod, and the watching the way that a fly line unfurls in front of you, and all that stuff. It sounds really kind of ridiculous and romantic, but I think that's a big part of it. You know, it's an
Yeah.
all sensory sort of sport.
Yeah, there's a little more science to it too. Understanding the life cycles, the
Yeah.
river, the way they change. It's something. It's more. It's more in depth. I don't know how to explain it, but there's more to it than just okay. What spoon am I going to throw at this
Yeah.
redfish?
Oh, for sure. No, there's no question about that. And there's that's a whole nother part of it. You're right. I mean, when you start, you know what it's like when you again when you're having to defend yourself as a an all-consuming fly angler, and people that are looking at you like, what is this thing all about? And you start telling them about insect hatches and how trout are eating, mayfly nymphs, and then, mayflies that are hatching at the surface, and mayflies that are dying after having, laid their eggs and all that stuff. And they're like, what? Or what are you talking about? You pull out the fly boxes, you show them all that stuff. Yeah, it's very involved. No question about it. And again, it's something that we've all heard, but you never stop learning in this sport, which is a great part of it. No question about it.
Yeah, it's funny. If it's not funny, but it's a unique sport. But you look back over the great minds that were fly anglers through history. There's a reason why people were attracted to it that were in very stressful jobs or all consuming. There's a reason why it's a thinking man
sure.
sport. We had a guest on here and her name's Ann Miller, and she wrote a book called Hatch Guide for Upper Midwest Streams. And it was really funny because she actually created in her basement, because she had to write this book. So she created in her basement a whole ecosystem, and bugs were like hatching in her basement. And her husband was her husband was pissed. He's like, I need my house back, because she had one going in the basement and then she had another one going in the garage, like entire ecosystems, because she had to like take pictures of the flies and everything.
Oh man, that's a whole nother level.
It totally is. And this is, I mean, her book is amazing. And, you go through the book, and it's not an ad for her book, but, you go through the book, and then on the back page, it says, like, it gives you the recipe for the particular fly to tie. But, I've never met a spinning gear guy who's willing, especially a spinning gear female, who's willing to completely change her basement so she could figure out, like, what rubber lure pattern she could use. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
I'm sure, I'm sure that out there some really crazy like bass anglers that
right,
have big fish tanks in their in their basements or something like that, and are doing all the research too. But you're right. I mean, think of how many guys we know as well, or people we know that are really into this, that they've got the room in the house that you open the door and feathers are are stuck to the walls, and the shag carpet has dubbing and hooks buried in it because they're crazy about fly tying. And yeah, it gets a little bit out of control. No question about it.
Yeah, I've got a friend of mine. I met him on the river, and he invited me over one time. He's an older guy, and he's like, you got to come over and tie flies with me. So I come over, and in Michigan, we always take our shoes off when you go in someone's house because, there's snow, and everything like that. He's like, don't take your shoes off. He said, no, if you're coming downstairs. I'm like, why? He goes, you'll know. So you go downstairs, and there's like you said, there's hooks everywhere on the floor. He's an older guy, so he drops things a lot, and you can't see him. So you always keep your shoes on in his house or in his basement because of that very reason.
Absolutely. Of course. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. What is your most memorable moment with all your travels and things like that? What's one of your most memorable moments, Jon?
Oh, man. Boy, you sprung that one on me good, didn't you? Well, I immediately, start thinking about particular fish I caught, I guess. But I think a couple things that stand out to me are just my first trip to New Zealand, when I really first hiked into a backcountry stream and I saw a pool that looked like the pool in the pictures that you see, where the water was so clear that, it looked like it was 3 feet deep and it was really 10 feet deep, and where you could see a trout and a tail out, from 200 feet away, that kind of thing. I mean, I think that is maybe one of the memories that really stays with me. And then I think another one is I caught a permit in Cuba a couple of years ago that was just like, one of those fish of a lifetime. It was just like ginormous. It was like between 30 and 40 pounds somewhere, and I'll never catch a fish like that again, so those are a couple.
Is that the picture that you sent over?
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. I tend to send that one out quite a bit.
Yeah. I'll make sure that's the one we use.
The truth to that, and it's the truth that, I mean, catching a big fish is just, let's face it, it's dumb luck. Right? I mean, catching more fish is a mark of skill. Catching a fish that's under a tree on the far bank is that's again a measure of skill. Happening to catch the big one is just you do the right card or whatever. And I sent that picture of that permit around when I have to do a bio or whatever, because of course I'm like anybody else. I want to show the picture of me with a big fish. But that fish was more than likely, a head case, or it had fish dementia or something, because unlike all other permit in the world, that permit was over a patch of white sand in Cuba, and I was the one that actually happened to see it. We saw it from 200 yards away probably, And that fish not only stayed after my first cast, it was still there after probably my 30th cast.
Wow.
I think we changed flies 5 times. It obviously there was something there that it loved. It was just doing figure eights. And finally it made a stupid mistake and ate my fly. But it just doesn't happen. You never get 30 casts to a permit, right?
No, they're pretty finicky fish, aren't they?
They're incredibly finicky.
Right.
I was just at an event on Saturday at a shop here in Washington that did a saltwater school. It was fantastic. It was really great, and we were talking about the fish of the flats, and then we broke it all down. And one thing that I said that I was just trying to give people a measure of success, right? And I said, with bonefish, your success is just be getting better at it, right? Making good casts, being able to make a little bit longer cast, but you're going to catch a bonefish, right? If you go to Christmas Island, if you go to Cuba or Ascension Bay, unless everything goes against you, right? I mean, the weather is horrible and the fish are not on the flats, you're going to catch a bonefish. But your measure of success to me in permit fishing is that the permit notices your fly without spooking and follows it, looks like he's going to eat it, right? To me, that's a really big measure of success, because that fish could spook before you ever get a cast to it, because it saw the shadow of the boat, or it saw you raise your fly rod to make a cast, or your fly landed perfect cast and spooked the fish, or the fish saw, a little glint of flash off your leader and spooked out the flat, or whatever. But if you can get a fish, a permit to follow your fly, it means that you did so many things right. Right? And all you have to do now is do that 8 or 10 or 15 times, and you're going to get one that's going to eat the fly. And so, I think you have to kind of measure things and, with different fish in different ways. Right. And because otherwise you'll go crazy. You'll just absolutely become a psycho if you're trying to catch a permit and your measure of success is just catching one. Right. Because more than likely you're not going to catch one, at least right away. Now, there's dumb luck involved, like that. That permit I managed to catch that we talked about a little while ago. That happens, but it's not normal. It's not normal. Yeah.
Well, it's
They're
funny.
Really horrible fish.
I moved here to Michigan in 2002, and I met my wife in 2003. And her dad is a big fisherman, like he's spinning gear fisherman and everything. And so he decides to take me. He kept bugging me to go fishing in the river. And I said, John, John's my father-in-law's name. I said, I grew up on the Gulf. I'm used to catching big redfish. I'm used to catching speckled trout. I'm used to catching flounder and that's cute, your little trout and everything, but I'm used to catching these big fish, So he said, I want to take you out, So he takes me out in the fall. I hook into a big king salmon or within 20 minutes of getting there. And I'm like, holy crap. That was amazing. And I was downtown Newaygo, Michigan. There's a big train trestle over me. And then there's the changing colors. And being an old Texas boy, where we don't have any colors at all in the seasons, we only have one season there. I was like, brown. This is brown and green. Those are our seasons. Yeah. But I was like, man, this is an unbelievable experience. Yeah. And then he took me out again in the spring for steelhead, and within 10 minutes, I was on my first steelhead. Well, I totally took it for granted. You don't hook a steelhead within the first 10, 15 minutes of fishing.
You don't want to. Yeah, you're cursed, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking like, okay, it was still amazing. Cold as all get out in the spring, but catching the steelhead, I all of a sudden I just took it for granted. Oh, this is a lot easier. And then the more you fish for them, and when you try to fish for them, it's quite a chase. It's not something you just go out there and do. But it's a little bit of luck, and then also when you realize when you run out of luck, it really sucks, because you're like, I really want to catch a steelhead.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, I'm a firm believer in that you can absolutely jinx yourself by having something happen too easily to you. I've got 2 boys, and I've brought them. I made sure they became fly anglers at a certain age. There was a time when they were like 6 and 7. We were at their spinning rods, and we would go on trips every summer. And there was a time when we were breaking everything out at our campsite to start our trip, and the boy said, "Hey, Dad, where are the spinning rods? There's only fly rods here." And I said, "Yeah, This is the trip you could become fly anglers, right? So they're into it. They're not like fanatical, but they love it. And my youngest son I had in Cuba with me a couple of years ago, and we were on a flat. We were bone fishing, and the guide had said, "I'm going to bring the permit rod with us." He said, "Sometimes we see a permit where we're waiting." And my son he just landed a bonefish, and we were releasing it and taking some pictures like you do, and we stood up, and there was a permit 40 feet away, maybe, just as happy as could be. And I grabbed that permit rod and I ripped all the line off and I handed it to my son, and he made a cast and the fish ate the fly.
Wow.
And he landed a permit waiting. One of the first permit he'd ever cast to, and I did. We took the pictures and released that fish, and I said, "You are screwed, son. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's it. That's the last permit you're going to catch for the next 20 years." I hope I'm wrong, but I feel like I'm right. So.
I hate to spoil. I don't mean to rain on your parade, son, but you just screwed yourself for the next 20 years.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's next for you? I mean, I know you said you got a trip coming up in Cuba, but I mean, what's next for you, Jon?
Well, Cuba stays as a staple for me. So no question, I do 4 or 5 trips a year to Cuba, mostly with customers, leading groups there. But I've gotten into Colombia. Colombia is another one of those places that I'm really fascinated with. I've been lucky. I've been a lot of places, and they're all good. But Colombia came on my radar 4 or 5 years ago, and I made some contacts there. And so I went for the first time last fall, I guess a little over a year ago. And boy, I fell in love with it. It's one of those countries, it's kind of up and coming on the scene, both with general tourism and certainly with fly anglers. It's got so much potential. So I'm doing 2 trips to Colombia in the next couple months, one for peacock bass, and then the other on the Pacific coast for more pelagic fish. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be one that I'm going to be going to.
Do they have the golden dorado there in Colombia? Or?
They do not. No, they don't have golden dorado. There's only there's 3 or 4 countries that have golden dorado. So it's Bolivia and Argentina and Uruguay, I think, that have them. And believe it or not, they really don't have them in Brazil. They don't have them in Colombia that I know of, which seems kind of crazy, right? But in Colombia, it's really unique. So geographically, if you don't know where it is, it's the very northwest corner of South America. It is where the isthmus with Panama and Central America attaches to South America. That's Colombia. So it has the Amazon basin to its east, where the Orinoco divides it from Venezuela. So that is one big fishery with all those fish. So it's got peacock bass and payara and etc. Big catfish, all that. It's got the Caribbean coast to the north, which obviously has fish. And then it's got the Pacific coast to the west.
Wow.
And in the Pacific coast there, much like Panama and Costa Rica, I mean, has all those great fish, rooster fish and sailfish and tuna and all that other stuff. But they get something unique, and I'm learning more about that. This is that there's a time of the year when all the sardinas push against the coast, right against the coast. And so within a half mile of shore, you get sailfish and schools of tuna and black marlin and everything else eating sardina. So I don't even go 30 miles offshore to catch a sailfish or a big tuna. You're going half a mile or a mile offshore. Really crazy. And the other thing that's unique about it is, although you can't guarantee that you can go catch one, they've got a pretty good population of snook there, which is crazy because they're in the Pacific Ocean, as well as tarpon. There are tarpon now living in the waters off the Colombian coast because they've come through the Panama Canal. And they say they've been there for 30 years or so, that they've noticed them dependably being there. And when I was there, we saw them. We had very difficult conditions where they were in a bay with breaking waves, but they were feeding right on the shoreline. And we cast to them, but we didn't hook any. But certainly they have them there. So it's a really unique fishery that I'm excited to explore. So look for that one, Jeff.
Well, that's great. Well, if someone wanted to reach out to you, Jon, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they've got a bunch of different ways. I'm glad to, I don't know how we'll share information with the podcast, but just generally they can Google me up. Jon Covich, it's Jon, no H, and Covich is Covich. They'll find a couple websites for me. One is CubaFishingOutfitters.com. The others, they can go through Flywater Travel to reach me, or they can just call me at my local phone number, which is 206-579-9342. And I'm glad to talk to anybody about travel anywhere, particularly those places that I love to go, like Cuba and Colombia.
Well, that's great, Jon. Well, thank you very much for taking some time for us. We'll be sure to put up those links and your phone number there on the show notes so people can check that out. And just want to thank you very much. I'm glad we could finally make it happen.
Me too, Jeff. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
Well, thanks again for joining me, Bill.
Yes. Awesome. Yes. You are welcome.
Yes, you're so welcome. So this is the second time we recorded it. The first time was so much better,
Yeah.
Bill, but now you got some emphasis. Yes.
Heck yeah.
I feel like I'm on like a 80s commercial when my mom serves me Kix cereal. Yes. Kid tested, mother approved. That's this website. This podcast, kid tested sometimes, but probably
This is
not
where they
mother
learn
approved.
that new language that they're not supposed to use at home.
Yeah, and don't feed them cornflakes.
No.
If you listen to a couple episodes back, Kix is fine, but cornflakes, you may want to refrain from that if you ever want to have grandkids. Check out the old podcast. Couple episodes back.
2-3 weeks back.
Yeah, but thanks for joining us, Bill. Thank you for joining us on another episode.
Yeah.
Be sure to check out our website, remotenopressure.com. Follow us on our socials. We greatly appreciate any reviews you give us. They're so awesome. People are still listening, I think.
Yeah.
Can I share a review?
Yeah. Speaking of, did you see the review off YouTube a couple weeks back?
That's what I was going to talk to you about.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
Oh, kind of a kick in the pants.
I thought it was hilarious, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I actually replied to it. And that's the one I was going to talk to you about. But I don't have it pulled up here. But the guy's like, well, first of all, he liked one of our other podcasts that he made a good comment on.
Yeah.
With the author. And then he comes on. We just did You and Me.
Yep.
That episode because we didn't have a
guest.
And he's like, blah blah blah, nothing but talking. I want to hear more about fly fishing. Blah blah blah. And it's like, okay, well, thanks for the feedback, bro.
Yeah.
Win some and you
Then he
lose
disliked us.
It's just kind of funny how people take time out of their day to just put blah blah.
Yeah.
Did they think some major conglomerate's putting this thing out, and that the host and the co-host?
That's a good way for us to get fired.
Yeah, we're gonna get fired. I'm going to share my grievances. It's like, just don't listen to the podcast. It's perfectly fine.
Be constructive with your criticism, right?
Yeah, like Joe from Flywaters calling me on Christmas Eve. Hey, Jeff, don't ever do another episode without a co-host. That is positive feedback. That is like, I can use that, Joe. Thank you. But we do appreciate reviews, even the goofy ones.
Yep.
And be sure to check us out on all of our socials. And until next time, go fishing.